Sarah rents. Tom buys. Same salary, same city, same $70,000 in the bank. 10 years in, they're closer than you'd ever guess. But stretch it to 30, and the gap between them opens up into 6 figures. And that's just the money. The other half has nothing to do with dollars, and it's the part people regret getting wrong, long after the math stops mattering. Most people guess the wrong winner here, because the rent versus buy decision buries its real cost in the places a monthly payment never shows you. Run it all the way out, and the gap is big enough to move the year you finally get to retire. Let's keep this fair. Sarah and Tom are the same age. They earn the same money. They each have $70,000 saved, and they're looking at the same kind of home in the same neighborhood. The only thing different is what they do with that 70 grand. Tom buys. The house is $300,000. He puts 20% down, $60,000, and another $10,000 on closing costs. The fees nobody mentions until you're at the table signing your name 40 times for the privilege of spending money you'll never see again. His loan is $240,000 at 6.5%. Principal and interest run about $1,500 a month, and once you add property tax, insurance, and maintenance, his real housing cost is closer to $2,150. Sarah rents the same kind of place for $1,950 a month, and her position on day one is the interesting one. She still has all $70,000. She puts the whole amount into a simple index fund, and because her rent runs $200 cheaper than Tom's monthly cost, she invests that difference too, every month. So on day one, the scoreboard tilts Sarah's way, though by less than it looks. She still has all $70,000, every cent of it liquid and already working in the market. Tom is holding about $60,000 in home equity, $10,000 lighter than he started, because that is what the closing costs quietly took off the top. His first act as a homeowner was spending 10 grand to get a little poorer on paper. Sarah is ahead. Not by a landslide, but she is ahead, and her money can move tomorrow. Quick one before we run the numbers. Right now, on day one, Sarah looks like she's winning. So make the call. 30 years from now, who's actually ahead? The renter or the buyer? Drop your pick in the comments before you watch the rest, then see if the math agrees with you. Most people guess wrong. For a while, that lead holds. And it holds for a reason most new buyers learn the hard way. In the early life of a mortgage, almost every dollar Tom pays goes to interest, not to the loan itself. After 2 full years of payments, he's knocked barely $5,500 off what he owes. More than $30,000 went straight to the bank as interest. On top of that, Tom is now the person who gets the call when something breaks. The water heater gives out in year 2, on a Sunday, with guests on the way. The roof needs work in year 4. None of it was on the brochure. All of it comes out of his pocket. Sarah calls her landlord and goes back to dinner. Tom calls a plumber and picks up a hobby he never asked for. This is the stretch that wrecks the math for people who move too soon. Between the closing costs going in and the agent's commission coming out when you sell, a house has to climb a hill before it earns you $1. For most buyers, that break-even point lands somewhere between year 5 and year 8. Sell before then, and buying was the more expensive choice. Full stop. Tom hasn't crossed that line yet. Sarah is still ahead. Put real numbers on it at year 5. Tom has paid out about $199,000, counting his down payment, his closing costs, and 5 years of payments. He's sitting on roughly $130,000 in equity, but if he sold and paid the agent today, he'd pocket closer to $110,000. Sarah has paid about $125,000 in rent, and her investments are worth around $110,000. Net of selling costs, the two of them are basically even. Except Sarah spent less to get there and can still move tomorrow morning. Before the break-even point, renting is quietly winning. Now the clock turns against Sarah, and she barely notices it happening. Her rent is not a fixed number. It climbs. 3 to 4% a year is normal, which sounds harmless until you stretch it across a decade. Every spring, a renewal letter lands on her counter with a slightly bigger number than last year. The jump is small enough to shrug at, so she signs it and gets on with her life. Then she does it again the next spring, and the spring after that. Before we get to where that leads, one quick thing. Running these numbers properly, with real rates and real inflation, is the whole point of this channel. So if that's your kind of thing, subscribing means the next breakdown actually finds you. Anyway, Tom's mortgage payment does the opposite of Sarah's rent. That $1,500 principal and interest is locked for 30 years. It's $1,500 when his kids leave home, and $1,500 the year before the loan disappears. Sarah's 1950 rent grows to about $2,700 by year 10, and keeps climbing every year after. Somewhere around year 4 or 5, the monthly cost quietly flips. Tom, the one who looked reckless on day 1, now pays less every month to live in a bigger asset. From there, the gap only widens. To be fair to Sarah, Tom's costs don't sit perfectly still either. His property tax, his insurance, and his repair bills all drift upward over the years. Only the loan payment is truly frozen. It just happens to be the biggest piece, which is why the math still tips his way over time. Let's check the scoreboard at the end of year 10. Tom has now paid out roughly $328,000 all in, between the upfront money and 10 years of payments. His house has appreciated at a modest 3.5% a year, so it's worth about $420,000. He still owes $203,000, which leaves him $218,000 in equity, closer to $195,000 if he sold and paid the agent. Sarah has paid about $276,000 in rent over the same decade. Her $70,000, growing at 8% a year with her early monthly surplus on top, has become roughly $160,000. Every cent of it liquid, flexible, hers to move tomorrow. One honest note on that number. In the early years, Sarah had a couple $100s of rent savings to invest each month. As her rent climbed toward Tom's fixed cost, that surplus shrank and eventually flipped. So most of her $160,000 is simply the original $70,000 compounding. The market did the heavy lifting, not the rent gap. After 10 years, Tom has nosed ahead, around $195,000 if he sold, against Sarah's $160,000. But for two paths this different, a house on one side and a stock portfolio on the other, that gap is smaller than almost anyone expects. Anyone who told you renting is throwing money away, or that buying is always the smarter play, simply never ran it this far. The real separation hasn't happened yet, and it's everything that happens next. Stretch the timeline to 30 years, and the two paths separate for good. Around year 30, Tom makes his final mortgage payment. After 360 of them, the last one clears on an ordinary Tuesday, quietly, the same way the first one did. But the next month, for the first time in his adult life, nothing leaves his account for housing at all. The house is his. From that day on, his only costs are taxes, insurance, and upkeep, while the home itself is worth somewhere near $840,000. Sarah's rent, meanwhile, has climbed past $5,000 a month, and it will keep rising every year she's alive. Here is the full 30-year tally. Tom has paid somewhere around $900,000 across 3 decades, once his taxes, insurance, and repair bills drift upward over the years, the way we said they would, And he owns that $840,000 house free and clear. And he isn't selling it, he's living in it, which is the whole point. So no agent's commission comes out of that number. His monthly cost is down to somewhere around $1,200 to $1,500 in taxes, insurance, and upkeep. Sarah has paid over $1.2 million in rent. And if she invested with real discipline the whole way, she's holding a portfolio worth around $700,000. But she still writes a rent check north of $5,000 a month, and it climbs again next year. By 30 years, the buyer is ahead on net worth and miles ahead on monthly cost. And the gap grows every month that follows. And if you made a call back at the start, here's your answer. In the base case, the buyer pulls ahead by year 30. If you picked Tom, you read it right. If you picked Sarah, don't close the tab, because there's a version of this where you win, and we're about to get to it. On the surface, that looks like a knockout for Tom. Usually it is. But there's an honest case for Sarah, and it rests on a single word: discipline. If Sarah truly invested every dollar she saved by renting, the cheaper early years, the $70,000 that never became a down payment, and never once skimmed from it, her portfolio after 30 years could, on the same 8% return we've used all the way through, clear $700,000 and keep compounding long after Tom's house slows down. The catch is that almost nobody does that. The money renters are supposed to invest mostly gets spent. The raise becomes a nicer car. The savings become a vacation. The $200 a month she swore she'd invest becomes a slightly nicer grill. Tom's mortgage forced him to build wealth without thinking about it, a payment he couldn't skip. Sarah had to choose it, on purpose, every month for 30 years. A few people genuinely pull that off. Most don't. Up to here, we've only counted dollars. But money is one half of this decision, and the other half never lands on a spreadsheet. When Sarah rents, she doesn't control the roof over her head. Her landlord can sell the building out from under her. He can decide not to renew the lease. He can raise the rent past what she budgeted, change the pet rules, or take his time on repairs, because every fix comes out of his margin, not hers. And the part that stings most has nothing to do with the money. Sarah is building a whole life on top of that lease. Her kid's school, her commute, the neighbor who waters her plants when she travels. All of it sits on ground somebody else owns, and that somebody can ask her to leave with 60 days' notice. Tom can paint a wall, knock one down, or plant a tree he'll actually sit under in 20 years. That's not a number a calculator can show you, but anyone who's been forced out of a home they loved knows exactly what it was worth. But ownership carries its own quiet cost, and it's the mirror image of Sarah's. Tom is tied to that house. When a dream job opens up 3 states away, or a parent gets sick across the country, he can't just take it and go. He has to list the place, wait months for the right buyer, and hand a slice of his equity to an agent before he can even pack. And if the market is soft the year he needs to move, he might not be able to sell at a price that makes sense at all. So the opportunity drifts past him while the house quietly holds him in place. Roots are a beautiful thing, right up until the day you need to move and can't. So the trade runs both ways. The control Tom gains is the freedom Sarah keeps. The roots he plants are the mobility she holds on to. Buying hands you stability and a place that's genuinely yours. Renting hands you the freedom to walk away clean in 30 days. The right question is, which one the next 10 years of your actual life are going to need? So who actually wins? The honest answer comes down to 3 things, and the price of the house isn't one of them. The first is how long you'll stay. Under 5 years, renting almost always wins, because you never climb past the cost of buying and selling. Past 7 or 8 years, ownership pulls ahead and keeps pulling. The second is your city, and this one can flip the whole answer. Picture a home that costs $1.25 million, but rents for $3,500 a month. The kind of gap you see in San Francisco, Manhattan, or parts of Los Angeles. Owning that costs roughly 3 times the rent every single month, and the appreciation almost never closes a gap that wide. In those markets, renting the place and investing the enormous difference is the clear winner, not the consolation prize. In a normal mid-sized city where a house costs barely more to own than to rent, the math points the other way, and buying is the easy call. Same decision, opposite answer, decided entirely by your zip code. The third is the one nobody likes to admit. Whether you'll actually invest the money you save by renting or quietly spend it. Be honest with yourself about which person you are, because the whole result swings on that answer. Those 3 decide the money, but remember the cost that never hit the spreadsheet, because it belongs in the verdict too. Buying buys you roots and a place that's truly yours. Renting buys you the freedom to move the day life asks you to. So the real answer almost always comes down to you, your next 10 years, and whether they call for stability or mobility. For most people, the ones who stay put and who would spend the difference rather than invest it, buying wins on the money and the roots together, and the mortgage quietly builds the wealth they could never trust themselves to save. For the disciplined investor in a high-cost city, or anyone who needs to stay light on their feet, renting and investing wins on both counts. The one mistake almost everyone makes is the same. They settle a 30-year decision, dollars and freedom alike, on the single number small enough to hide all of it, the monthly payment. And that's the trap hiding inside Tom's win. Buying beat renting for him, but only because he bought a house he could actually carry. Stretch past that, and the same math you just watched turns against you fast, as the mortgage that builds your wealth flips into the one that drains it. So here's the honest offer. Every week, I take one big money decision and run it to the last dollar, the way we just did, so you can see the real number before it costs you a house-sized mistake. Subscribing is the cheapest financial move you'll make all day. It's free, which is more than I can say for closing costs. And the next decision matters here, because buying only wins if you don't overpay in the first place. In the next video, I run the real numbers on exactly how much house you can afford on your income, and the specific figure most buyers overshoot by tens of thousands of dollars without ever realizing it. That one number decides whether everything you just saw works for you or against you. One quick note, this is a breakdown of how the math works, not advice for your exact situation. Your rates, your city, and your taxes will move these numbers, so treat it as a way to think, not a recommendation to follow.